A pleasant good afternoon to all of you. I'm Carmen Cummings, a proud alumna of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, where I'm humbled to serve as Assistant Vice President of University Engagement and Alumni Affairs. We're so delighted to have all of you with us today as Florida A&M proudly hosts the 10th Biennial Education and Science Forum. This virtual event themed 2 decades of excellence, nurturing future leaders in STEM, is presented by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, Educational Partnership Program with minority serving institutions, nurturing leaders of tomorrow. And how about that? Our global leaders, our global project manager, Stephen Bonda, and our FAMU Technology Pro, Michael Simmons, share more of the reason we're here. Thank you so very much, Stephen and Michael. As we said, the forum is hosted by Florida A&M University, the FAMU-based NOAA Center for Coastal and Marine Coastal Ecosystems, and its director. And I can tell you he's a pretty dynamic leader. In fact, he's the 12th president of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University and a distinguished professor and researcher in the School of the Environment at FAMU. He's worn many esteemed hats in leadership as the interim president, the director of FAMU's Environmental Sciences Institute, provost and vice president for academic affairs, and vice president for research. He is actively engaged in research with students and faculty as the director and principal investigator of the Center for Coastal and Marine Ecosystems. Recent honors include an appointment to serve on the National STEM Education Advisory Panel, Congressional Task Force to encourage U.S. scientific and technological innovations in education, a nuclear chemist. He has also served as senior scientific advisor at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Cooperative State Research, Education, and Extension Service. He also proudly accepted the Senate-confirmed position as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Conservation and Management at NOAA, participating on the front lines, addressing the BP oil spill crisis. And we are so delighted to have him at the helm of leadership at Florida A&M University. Please welcome our president of FAMU, Dr. Larry Robinson.
Well, thank you, Ms. Cummings, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Florida A&M University and the NOAA Center for Coastal and Marine Ecosystems, we are honored to host this very, very important education and science forum. Once again, I want to begin by thanking our internal organizing committee and those across the Corporate Science Center universe, as well as our partners at NOAA's Educational Partnership Program for making this possible. The theme for this year's event, as you heard, is 2 decades of excellence nurturing future leaders in STEM. This theme reflects our commitment to prepare STEM leaders who will make impacts for generations to come. I am looking forward to the next 2 days. In our time together, we will emphasize 20 years of successful partnership between NOAA's Educational Partnership Program for Minority Serving Institutions and the Cooperative Science Centers. These partnerships have resulted in the education and graduation of hundreds of students. The focus is on students from traditionally underrepresented minority communities in science fields relevant to NOAA's mission. As I have often said, minority serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities are sources of largely untapped STEM talent. This forum gives students at these institutions an opportunity to showcase their talent and to hear from professionals about how to prepare for the challenges ahead. These students will find the solutions to the problems we have not yet even encountered. During this opening session, I am looking forward to a conversation with former EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson, who currently serves as Apple's Vice President for Environment Policy and Social Initiatives. Ms. Jackson led the EPA during the Obama administration from 2009 to 2013. She will bring us invaluable insight from both a public and private sector perspective. We'll also hear from Benjamin Friedman, the Deputy Undersecretary for Operations, who's performing the duties of Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and Noaa Administrator. Ben serves as the agency's Chief Operating Officer and is responsible for the day-to-day management of NOAA's national and international operations for oceanic and atmospheric services, research, and coastal marine stewardship. Also on the lineup is Ms. Louisa Koch, NOAA's Director of Education. Louisa, along with Ms. Jacqueline Rousseau, our Program Manager at NOAA, have both been here from the very beginning. This time a year ago, we were scheduled to gather on the FAMU campus, but COVID-19 intervened. As a result of the pandemic, we had to cancel the forum about a week or so before it was scheduled to occur. The past year has been a learning experience. We know now that we can do so much more in this virtual environment with platforms like Zoom and other digital tools that some of us were not all that accustomed to a year ago, but suddenly we have become experts at it. But we still haven't given up on meeting in person. As optimists, we planned a two-phased approach to the forum. This phase is an accommodation to the travel and in-person restrictions in place due to the ongoing pandemic. But with testing and vaccines now more widely available, we hope to return to some semblance of normalcy in the fall. Our campus will have a much larger portion of in-person classes. We hope to host athletic events again. And just as important, we hope to hold phase 2 of this forum in person in late October of this year. Please mark your calendars for October the 25th through the 27th. This event is possible because NOAA is committed to capacity building across all of the corporate science center institutions as a result of these 4 cooperative agreements. This commitment has been there from the beginning. In fact, you might trace this program's beginning in and of itself to a meeting that occurred on December the 17th, 1997. I had the pleasure of participating in that meeting along with presidents or designees from 10 HBCUs and NOAA Administrator Dr. James Baker and Commerce Deputy Secretary Robert Mallett. Following lengthy discussions and planning sessions and meetings over time, a memorandum of understanding followed between NOAA and a consortium of these 10 HBCUs that ultimately provided the foundation and the framework for NOAA's educational partnership program with minority serving institutions. As it says on NOAA's website, within that framework, the primary goal of EPP/MSI was identified. And please note this, it was to increase the number of individuals from traditionally underrepresented minority communities who are trained and graduate with degrees in STEM fields that directly support NOAA's mission. However, it took a few years for the HBCU consortium, along with others, to do the legwork to encourage Congress to fund the Educational Partnership Program in 2020. And we thank the US Congress every chance we get, and we remind them every chance we get of the importance of this program and its successes over the years. Through cooperative agreements, the corporate science centers have been able to work very closely with NOAA to ensure the continued success, to actually realize the vision that we had when we started this conversation in 1997. NOAA has been particularly innovative in its approach to developing and managing this very competitive program. it never lost its focus to increase the number of individuals from traditionally underrepresented minority communities. Much of the innovation in this program is actually embedded in the federal funding opportunity itself. For example, it requires that at least 50% of the funding goes directly to support students. It requires graduate students to do a 12-week, what we called experiential research and training opportunity at Noaa facilities, working side by side with Noaa scientists and policymakers, requiring each center to have a distinguished research center, scientist, and just as important, an education coordinator with center-wide responsibilities as well. It linked each center with the appropriate line office through technical monitors and technical advisors, and tracks outcomes of our work in real time through the utilization of external evaluators who are required, and biannual reports, and something that we really all love, something called the Student Tracker Database. But perhaps one of the most significant innovations of the current awards is the provision in FFO to allow for a non-competitive 5-year extension contingent upon the outcome of a rigorous external review process. We are very proud at CCME, the Center for Coastal Marine Ecosystem, that we have received notification that that process will be able to benefit from that provision as well. So we're really thankful for Noaa for having that foresight, as well as all of our partners across the center that did the work to make that really happen. And then I think another innovative part of this collaboration with Noaa is indeed the forum itself. The forum is rotated among CSC lead institutions every 2 years, bringing Noaa scientists, institutional scientists, and most importantly, our students together with other interested stakeholders to promote student professional development, pursue additional research, training, and collaborative opportunities, and to bring to the attention of the broader scientific community the work of our students, our faculty, our staff, and Noaa partners. I am certain that you're going to enjoy the next couple of days for this 10th Biennial Forum, and we're really, really proud to host it here at the Center for Coastal and Marine Ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Robinson, and for your unwavering commitment to the mission of nurturing future leaders. As Dr. Robinson said earlier, we're so fortunate to have an esteemed panel of leaders today whose academic vision and scientific prowess will certainly generate some robust dialogue in the forum. So let's meet the panelists. Please welcome for remarks, as each of them will convey remarks today, the Director of Education, where she's applauded for raising awareness and inspiring the public and future workforce about the Earth system, the Director of Education for Noaa, Louisa Koch.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that welcome. I am delighted to be here today. I want to welcome everyone to this great 10th Biennial Educational Partnership Program with Minority Serving Institutions Education and Science Forum. I'd like everyone to take a minute now to share a word or two in the chat about how you're feeling today. We can't be together in person, but we can still connect. My word is excited. I am excited to be here at the forum today. At this 10th EPP Forum, we are celebrating 20 years of hard work and outstanding results. The program has accomplished so much in these years. So many classes taken, exams passed, research completed, degrees earned, and careers launched. So many alumni are doing important work to help us better understand and predict changes in the climate, weather, ocean, and coasts, sharing that knowledge with others, and conserving and managing coastal and marine ecosystems and resources. To help us focus on the importance of this work, I'm going to read a few inspirational words from Ode to the Ocean, written by Amanda Gorman, our National Youth Poet Laureate. Water makes up 70% of Earth, 70% of the human heart, and 70% of the human being. All of us, bodies of water, for we too are oceans, or at least beings bobbing in the same boat. To stand up for our ocean is to stand up for our own ship. I am delighted to see so many students joining us here today. This forum is for you. We are hoping to help you better understand everything that NOAA's Educational Partnership Program has to offer and how it can help you grow and learn. Our goal is to help you get the education and training you need to help prepare for a career at NOAA or NOAA-related careers in the private sector, academia, or other government organizations. We have lots of exciting speakers coming here today at this forum. In addition to the amazing keynote speakers, we have EPP alumni and a number of outstanding EPP students making presentations. I hope these talks will get you excited about the possibilities the program offers you and help you figure out your next steps. Please ask questions throughout the forum. Our speakers will be looking for your questions to ensure they give you the information you need. You can add questions to the chat at any time. There are folks monitoring the chat that will work to get those questions answered. And thank you, Dr. Robinson, for your dedicated efforts to EPP for more than 20 years. Your leadership, vision, and guidance have helped make this program the amazing program that it is today. I am delighted to be here on behalf of Jacqueline Rousseau, the EPP team, and NOAA employees across the agency who are working hard with you and your colleagues to make this program a success. Thank you also for leading the organization of this forum. It was painful when we had to cancel the event last year because of the pandemic, but that was definitely the right decision. It was wonderful to be together. It is wonderful to be together today, connecting students, faculty, NOAA staff, and other partners. Thanks to everyone who came together to organize this great event. Thanks to all of you for putting your words in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of great words: inspired, humble, happy, ready, hopeful, excited, interested, and blessed. What wonderful words to set the tone for this great forum. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ben Friedman, the acting administrator of NOAA. The NOAA administrator has a big job overseeing the National Weather Service, working every day to protect people from severe weather. He oversees operational satellites, ships that sail the oceans, and aircraft monitoring their system, as well as the Fisheries Service, the Ocean Service, and NOAA Research. Ben Friedman knows his way around NOAA. This is his second stint as the acting administrator, and he has served as the Deputy Undersecretary for Operations for many years. And before that, he worked as NOAA's General Counsel. Ben earned a bachelor's in molecular biology, a master's in theology, and a law degree. You can tell by this interesting mix of degrees that Ben is a very special person. He is passionate about the EPP program and has been a champion for us for many years. His experience teaching at Howard gives him insight into the fabulous untapped talent we are connecting with at the EPP institutions. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ben Friedman. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Louisa, for that very kind welcome. And let me just say that I am so excited to be here today at this year's Education and Science Forum. You know, this is really one of my favorite programs at NOAA, and to be here to celebrate 20 years of success and this incredible partnership between NOAA and some of the top universities across the country to focus on our science and improve our sciences, it's a great event. So I know this year's theme, as has already been said, is 2 decades of excellence, nurturing future leaders in STEM. And what an amazing 2 decades it has been. Since 2001, NOAA has supported over 4,000 students through the Educational Partnership Program. And the Cooperative Science Centers have graduated over 2,400 degrees in NOAA sciences, including over 1,400 undergraduate degrees and over 800 graduate and professional degrees. And we have literally changed the demographics of those entering NOAA sciences. Fully 54% of those getting PhDs in Africa, or 54% of African Americans getting PhDs in atmospheric sciences have been supported through this program. and 21% of Hispanic Americans going into atmospheric sciences. 35% of African American PhDs in marine sciences have been supported through this program, and 39% of Hispanic American PhDs going into marine sciences. Those are just incredible numbers, and I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who's been involved in this program for the incredible success over the last 20 years. Now, I know there's actually a broad audience here today. There are students, there are academicians, there are those from the natural resource community, but I do want to spend a few minutes talking to the students, because really this program is about the students. And I know for students, you're studying hard, you're working hard, but you're looking for the future and you're thinking about what's next. And I can tell you right now, you're going to have incredible opportunities. Majoring in STEM, there's going to be lots of opportunities in the private sector, in academics, in nonprofits. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about public service and NOAA in particular, and reasons you really might want to explore a career at NOAA, and things you should be thinking about if you're interested in exploring a career at NOAA. So let me start with just the breadth of our mission. Now, I know many students are currently working in a particular NOAA area, but NOAA has this incredibly broad mission. We like to say that our mission takes us from the surface of the sun to the bottom of the ocean, and that is really true. We literally have a satellite that monitors emanations off the sun. We call it space weather, and it can impact electrical grids and other electronics on Earth. And on the other end of the spectrum, we do deep sea exploration, exploring the bottom of the oceans. And we do everything in between, from climate science and atmospheric sciences to, of course, all things weather, and everything involving the oceans, from regulating fisheries to protecting endangered species to the oldest part of NOAA, the Office of Coast Survey that started in the days of Thomas Jefferson to survey the nation's coast. So what does that mean for you? We have this incredible broad mission. What that means is that we ask scientists at NOAA to look across our mission. Yes, that you're focused in a certain area, but we hope you look across our mission and do cross-disciplinary work. It also means, because we're such a large and diverse organization, that there's all sorts of opportunities. We have PhDs going into policy work. We have PhDs that go into management or even budget. So there's a lot of various opportunities within NOAA because of the breadth of our mission. We also have incredible resources at NOAA. The workforce at NOAA, between employees and contractors, is over 20,000. We have 15 ships and another 400 small boats. We have 16 satellites that we operate, weather and environmental satellites, 10 planes, including the most famous ones, the Hurricane Hunters, which fly into the eye of hurricanes to collect data that's imperative for hurricane modeling. We have over 700 facilities across the country. We are in every state and territory. We have some of the biggest high-performance computers in the country, and we have the best weather and climate models in the world. So we have these great resources at NOAA that are really unmatched for our scientists to work in. And we really have worked hard recently to improve workforce issues at NOAA and make NOAA a great place for everyone to work. We have a very large initiative going on right now we're calling the Year of the Workforce, that really encompasses a number of different workforce issues. Diversity and inclusion is very high on that list. We're trying to increase diversity within NOAA, and not just increase diversity, but also make sure that we have an inclusive environment where everyone wants to work, so that not only do we attract great talent, but we retain great talent. We also are really working on workplace flexibilities. Like everyone, we've been dealing with in the world of COVID over the last year, and we're looking at flexibilities post-COVID to make sure that everyone has good work-life balance. And so that's a really exciting initiative as well. I should say we are hiring at NOAA. Last year, we hired over 1,600 new people at NOAA. That's the most we've hired in over a decade. We currently have 66 former educational partnership program alumni working within Noaa. And we have these great new resources to do direct hires out of our internship and fellowship programs. These are new hiring authorities we've received just in the last couple of years, and it's been really exciting for us. And we've really started to hire out of these programs. And there's great opportunities for internships at Noaa, and I really encourage you to look into those. Over the last 20 years, we've had over 450 undergraduate interns at Noaa out of the Educational Partnership Program. And just in the last 5 years, we've had over 200 graduate student interns at Noaa. And these are great opportunities for you to explore Noaa and to see if there's a good fit, and potentially to get a direct hiring offer out of those experiences. So over the next couple of days, you're going to be hearing from a lot of educational partnership program alumni that are currently working at Noaa. People like Jeanette Davis, who's going to talk to you about omics. Jeanette has a PhD in marine biology from Maryland, and she's actually a perfect example who's explored different options. She's a great scientist and has been doing research, but recently has decided to start focusing on policy and is actually now working directly for me as one of my senior policy advisors. You're going to hear from people like Janice Sims talking about artificial intelligence, and Danae Carlis talking about cloud computing. These are folks that are really at the forefront of science within Noaa and are graduates of this program. So I really encourage you to participate in those conversations and ask questions about their experiences at Noaa. So what are we looking for at Noaa? Well, I think it's kind of what I've already expressed. We are certainly looking for folks that have an expertise in certain areas, cutting edge areas that we're interested in, things like omics and artificial intelligence and cloud computing. But we're really also looking for employees and scientists that have a broad spectrum of experience and interests and can look across different sciences and do interdisciplinary work. This is becoming more important, for example, as we look at climate and climate change, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. But it's really important that we have creative minds that are interested in looking at various disciplines to solve these really complex problems. So not only do we like you to be an expert in a certain area, but we really like you to be great scientists and in a broader spectrum as well. And that's really the challenge for you as both students and educators to develop these great students that'll come to Noaa and be great scientists. So in the next few minutes, let me move to some big initiatives that are going on at Noaa right now. So the biggest thing, of course, is that we have a new administration in place, the Biden administration, and we are in the midst of transferring to this new administration. With a new administration comes new people and priorities. Of course, Noaa is part of the Department of Commerce, and you may have seen that we have a new Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo. Secretary Raimondo is the former governor of Rhode Island, the 75th governor of Rhode Island, and the first woman governor of Rhode Island. She is, of course, Rhode Island is the ocean state, so we're really excited to have her as our new boss. In just the first week on the job, she met with leadership. She had an all hands with Noaa in a town hall forum, and she went to one of our sites up in Rhode Island. So she clearly has a deep interest in everything we do, and we're excited to be working with her. We're also seeing new political appointees at Noaa. I am the acting administrator. We have yet to see a new administrator in place, but we hope to see one soon. And meantime, we have a chief of staff, a general counsel, and other political appointees that are starting to come in. Meanwhile, the priorities of the new administration, I'm sure you've heard about them. They're widely publicized, and there's been executive orders in these areas. But for Noaa, the biggest ones are climate change, racial equity, and scientific integrity. There's others that apply to us as well, but those are some of the biggest ones we're working on. Of course, when it comes to climate change is impacting everything Noaa does. It's impacting everything that this country does, and really everything that the world does right now. Just to give you some sense, within Noaa, of course, in our fisheries line office, there's a huge impact to fisheries as we see fish migrations changing, fish habitat changing, huge impacts to endangered species in the oceans. So huge impacts to our fisheries line office. In the Weather Service, last year we saw 22 significant weather incidents in the US. And these are defined as having a $1 billion or more impact on the US economy. So we saw 22 last year. The previous record was 16, and the average over the last 40 years is 7. So that gives you some sense of just the climate and weather we're seeing changing right now. And in the Ocean Service, of course, we're seeing huge increases in sea level rise and coastal inundation, which is impacting everything the Ocean Service does. So this is really impacting everything Noaa does. And so what does it mean that we're really focusing on climate change now and climate work? Well, it means several things. One is that we have a series of initiatives that we're working with the White House on and other federal agencies on. And those are things like working on the social cost of carbon. What is that? Well, that's literally trying to assign a dollar cost to society for each metric ton of new carbon that's produced. We're working on a goal called 30 by 30, which is attempting to basically preserve 30% of US lands and 30% of US oceans by 2030. Obviously, we're very focused on the ocean side of that, and we're very involved in those conversations with the White House. We're working to help set up a civilian climate corps, which is really trying to put Americans to work in climate areas. And we're helping advance offshore wind goals of this administration. You may have seen last week that there was a large announcement by the White House that to set aside a significant area of ocean between Long Island and the New Jersey coast for offshore wind. And Noaa is very involved in those conversations and assisting the administration in pushing those through. Meanwhile, there's also just initiatives within Noaa. Things like the new Interagency Council for Advancing Meteorological Services. This is a brand new organization. We are co-leading this with the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And it is an interagency group that is focused on meteorological sciences throughout the federal family and making sure that we're advancing and focusing on the entire federal meteorological enterprise. So that's been a really exciting, a recent launch. We've recently announced a request for proposals for $33 million under the National Coastal Resilience Fund of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And we've recently publicized a federal registration notice to receive public comment on increasing resilience of fisheries and protected resources. So within Noaa, we're working on a broad group of areas within climate as well. Now, underlying all of this are these themes of racial equity and scientific integrity. Racial equity is really about making sure that our services and our data are reaching all communities within the United States, particularly those that have been traditionally underserved. We have a working group that's currently working on this to make sure that we are complying with the executive orders issued by the White House. And this is a really exciting new focus for Noaa. It's something that, of course, we've focused on in the past, but this initiative has really forced us to look at things in new ways and make sure that we are providing services equally throughout the country. We're also really focused on scientific integrity. There were some challenges in the last administration on scientific integrity, and it is certainly Noaa's intent to make sure that everything we do is data-driven and science-based. And so we have some great new initiatives there as well. So with all of this, I really look forward to working with all of you on these initiatives going forward and to furthering these really important new goals. Let me just close by saying that the last 20 years have been incredible. We've made amazing advancements, and I'm very excited about that. but the next 20 years are going to be even more important. And honestly, I think we can change the world. So with that, thank you, and I will turn the program back over.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Friedman, for being with us, for your enthusiasm about what's on the horizon. We look forward to that with great anticipation because of your leadership in the new administration. Thank you so much again for being with us and conveying your comments. She was the first African-American to proudly serve as administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the Obama administration. A chemical engineer, she now serves as Apple's Vice President of Environmental Policy and Social Initiatives. And we're so pleased to have her with us today. Please welcome Ms. Lisa Perez-Jackson for a conversation with FAMU President, Dr. Larry Robinson. Welcome.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting.
Hello, Lisa. How are you? If I could get the host to start my video, I would appreciate that, please. If I could get you to unlock it. Okay, thank you. There we go.
There you are.
All right. Hello, Lisa, again. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm
Good to
doing
see
great.
you.
So thank you for agreeing to join us for today's session, being Keynote, although we're going to do this in a slightly different format. But I think this is going to work extremely well. There was one thing on your bio that I think is extremely important, at least to me, either way, and that is, it's really amazing that on July the 15th, 2010, you and I served, well, actually gave testimony before a subcommittee of the U.S. Senate Appropriations on the use of dispersants in the Gulf BP oil spill. And so this is a format that I guess you and I are kind of accustomed to, right? I mean, that.
Side by side in the discussions of science and protection of our precious environment. Nowhere I'd rather be, President Robinson.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that two African Americans sat there that day dealing with one of the nation's most significant environmental crises in history. So I'm pleased to have you with us today. And so let me just begin with a couple of statements here because it's really about your career, and we want to use that to really help the students in particular really get a sense for how your career developed. And so the first thought is that throughout your career you have really remained steadfast in your focus to aid underserved communities, particularly in areas of environmental justice, right? Tell us just a little bit about your personal path to developing a career serving others in this particular capacity.
I'm happy to, and it really is an honor to join you here, Larry. I'm going to call you President Robinson because all these students need to know that. But it's really great to be a part of anything you're doing, especially something aimed at STEM and aimed at science and our communities, the way the center and your work is. So I grew up in New Orleans, so another child of the Gulf Coast region, and I was probably like many of our students and actually professors and faculty here. I was really good in science and I was really good at math. So sometimes I speak to folks and I'm trying to get them interested in math, but I know this is a self-selected crowd of proud folks who are already made that selection. And I'm so happy to try to give you motivation for the journey and to continue the work and the focus on the environment. My motivation was growing up in New Orleans, and about, as I became old enough to think past fun, realizing that we are at the mouth of the Mississippi River. Studies came out saying that by the time the Mississippi River water got to us, and that's our source of drinking water, that it had hundreds of pollutants in it, not all of which are removed by water treatment systems. And so this idea of Cancer Alley, the section of the Mississippi River banks that used to be home to plantations was now home to chemical plants and oil refining plants, and what that did to air quality, and they called it Cancer Alley because of the impacts on human health. All that I became aware of. I wanted to be a medical doctor because, and I bet many of the students here have been said, well, if you're good in math and science, but be a doctor. But I became interested in the environment because when I was in high school, the local university, Tulane University, had a program to interest Black students in engineering. And I went. And I'll make you laugh. The reason I went was because if you stuck with the program for 6 weeks, gave up your summer for 6 weeks, you got a programmable calculator at the end. So those things were precious back then. And I was enough of a nerd that I wanted one. So I went to the program and I came away understanding that there was a profession called engineering, and that engineering, generally engineers, especially chemical engineers, which is my training, we create pollution through the processes that we oversee and optimize. I became interested in the other side. Well, if we create it, we should be the ones to clean it up or prevent it. And so that was sort of my beginnings. I ended up going to graduate school at Princeton and working for a little nonprofit, but I was in Alexandria, Virginia, working for this nonprofit, and every person I knew who was working in the environmental field was working for the EPA. I did a lot of work with the EPA, and this was back in 85, 86, and I'm thinking, maybe I'll go to this place called the EPA and learn what's really happened, and then I'll leave and I'll go work for a consulting firm and make a lot of money. But I got there and I stayed and I loved it. And it always came back to me to this idea that the communities most impacted by pollution, and climate change, of course, is another form of pollution, needed to be at the table, needed to have voices in the room where the decisions were being made. And that's what EPA, that's what Noaa represents, and what you represented so well when you were undersecretary. This idea that we need to be in the room where it happens.
You have certainly been in the room and you have represented extremely well. I think you've been a bit modest so that students would know she started her academic path at Tulane as a National Merit Scholar. So you're a pretty bright student by any standard, and I hope that that programmable calculator is still working for you. One of the things that has been, I guess, one of the biggest challenges in addressing environmental problems of the day is to get people to break down the silos and getting people to work across those and taking interdisciplinary approaches. And you've been able to do that at Apple. And tell us a little bit about that and how effective has that been, or do you envision it being in really solving problems that impact underserved communities?
Yeah, great. A couple of reflections on that. I'm going to finish my story by saying I served with Dr. Robinson from 2009 to 2013. I left after Obama's reelection. And that was a pretty clear time for me that I felt like I had taken the agency a long way, and service in DC at the level that we were at the level that Dr. Friedman is at now, is tough. I really hope many of you will think about what he talked about in terms of the intersection of science and policy, and how hard it is sometimes to be the voice for good science when politics and money are pushing in opposite directions. So it's just something to know. But going back to collaboration, I think if there's one argument governments sometimes hear is that you're all siloed. You're working over in Noaa and we're working in EPA. I don't think it was true at all, especially on climate when we were there. It wasn't true for the BP explosion in Deepwater oil spill, oil gusher, whatever you want to call it. But there are times when we all get busy in our little worlds and we're focused on what we do. But in general, we do much better work when we come together like we did for Deepwater or around climate, and almost have like a separate, almost the whole arm of the government is focused on what we all can do jointly and separately to address a problem. So Apple, now I leave and I end up at Apple. I work directly for our CEO, Tim Cook. And I started my job working on environmental issues. And interestingly enough, about 2 years in, he asked me to take over worldwide government affairs. So you can't get away from the government, no matter what you do. But I also do our work, I lead our work around community education and our work around racial equity and justice, which we announced a new initiative on that last June in the wake of the Floyd murder. So, I think Apple's whole idea is this idea of collaboration makes a better product. In fact, I would say sometimes the collaboration is there's such a rigor around collaboration that you can work on a project for a really long time and, assume it's going to happen. And then somebody brings up a point in a different area and we stop and we go back and we fix it, or we adjust based on input from all over the company. And that sort of grew out of the Apple product development process, which is hardware and software that are developed at the same time together. So you can't have hardware engineers over in one building, developing the next iteration of the iPhone or something else really cool, but the software engineers aren't making the software that makes that product really work flawlessly. And so that's sort of that ethos at Apple. Now, what I've been loving, Dr. Robinson, is watching this generation who, honestly, they see this intersection, this idea of collaboration as fundamental to really achieving not just environmental justice, or climate justice, but really tackling climate change. More and more people are saying you will not fix environmental problems if the solution isn't just. You cannot deal with health issues if education isn't part of it, if economic equity and empowerment are not part of the equation, because it's not a sustainable system. There's not enough resources in the system. So I think at Apple, when we look at our problems, because I kind of have all these programs, when we do environmental work, we're also putting that into our government affairs bucket. When we announced last year the Racial Equity and Justice Initiative, just in January, we gave our first update. And one of the things we announced is that we're going to have an impact accelerator to help foster Black and Brown-owned businesses that work in the clean energy and climate space. Why? Because it's not only important to find new technologies and new players, but to ensure that the benefits of the clean energy economy are spread across our country. We don't need some communities saying, I get all the pollution, but I get none of the solution. That's not okay. And that's what we're trying to deal with. We also just announced the Propel Center in Atlanta, which is meant to be a physical campus, but more importantly, a virtual resource for all HBCUs to access Apple's, genius around design, around hardware, around AI, around software, around video and music, all the things that people think of when they think of Apple. So, everything we do has to be about bringing groups together and working across. And I hope that shows up in our work as well.
Well, it really does. And I do want to commend Apple for really being, a model of corporate stewardship for many years, during the last year. And we're really pleased to see it. A lot of companies have stepped up on the issue of social justice, and we probably have seen, certainly at Florida A&M University, but among my fellow HBCU colleagues as well, of an explosion of corporate entities reaching out in terms of things that they could do to assist us in our mission. For example, I hosted a session of a conference entitled The Sustainability of HBCUs. It was on this corporate stewardship issue. And the subtitle of that session was Fad or New Future, right? And so I am sure that, Apple has been there, significantly in the past and will be there in the future. However, there is still a lot of room to expand, the impact and influence others, but also within the educational community itself, broader impact there, engagement with that educational community, with in particular minority serving institutions. You mentioned the Propel Center, but how do we use your model, your example of corporate stewardship to really bring a revolution, a sustainable revolution in this regard throughout that corporate sector?
Yeah, I think, look, one of the things I want to say is that we have to erase the lines between public service and private sector service more, right? Like people always ask me which one was more impactful, the public sector or the private sector. They're both impactful, and they're impactful in different ways, and there are things only government can do and things only the private sector can do and things only academia can do. Only academia can foster the crazy ideas and, go down the tunnel and hope for the answers and get the data and the experience and ideas that power everything that we do. But I think in general, more and more corporations should be looking not just at academia as a source of recruiting, like we want the best minds and the brightest talent, but as a source of motivation for work, right? New ideas, but also different ways of working. I mean, I think one of the opportunities we have in this moment is to make sure that technology is there for communities that now, as we see, will need to rely on it. Like educational equity and technology are now, to me, more closely aligned than they have ever been before. So that's why for us at Apple, I always say that we need to do the things we do. Tim actually says this, our CEO. He doesn't like when I come to him with an idea that has nothing to do with Apple, because it's not something we're good at. So why are we trying to stand up in front of the world and fake it? We are good at education. Apple has been in classrooms since the first Apple computers were made, in the 80s. And so that is in the 70s, I should say. But that is like how the company developed. So I think insisting on if it's a technology sector and technology company, that they're investing in the technology, the infrastructure of the institution. So first off, the students have the access to the tools that give them access to the world. That's the whole point of education. I think also for a lot of educational institutions, there are opportunities to partner with corporations on climate goals around clean energy, the procurement and ease of clean energy, I think is an opportunity we're all looking at, because especially public institutions don't have, they don't get the tax cuts that a lot of times help to pay for clean energy for a private institution. And so that can be an opportunity. I think internships and more cross-pollination, so that the needs of what you find in the private sector. I mean, the private sector is in business, it's capitalism, right? So they have their own sets of things we're trying to do, but getting ideas in and getting students in, I think, is really important. That's part of the reason for our work on our we do the C² initiative as well, coding and creativity with HBCUs and with Hispanic serving institutions. So look, I think that the private sector is more than just a money bag. There is money in the private sector right now, and that's really important. Don't get me wrong. I think that's super important. And companies should be putting their money where their mouths are. But if we don't blur some of the lines and create stronger relationships that are that take advantage of the incredible talent at HBCUs and at institutions in general, whether HBCU or not, then we've missed the boat, because eventually the money will peter out and nothing has fundamentally changed.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things that we came face to face with last year when we transitioned from about 90% plus in-person classes to 100% remote was that the digital divide is still there, right? And we have a lot of work to do in so many different places, from our campuses to the places our students and faculty live, to overcome that. And I think some of your initiatives at Apple are going to help us move the needle on some of those challenges in a significant way. So I really commend you for that. But my final thought is about you and your own interests, and how have the initiatives that you are engaged with, or some that you might not be engaged with at Apple, align with your own interests in addressing disparities and racial equality in terms of economic empowerment, criminal justice reform, and of course, environmental justice.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'm getting to that point now. I can look back at a life, or at least a career. I hope I have less career in front of me than I have behind me. And I actually think that's really important, by the way, because I think it's super important to see this next generation stepping up. The folks who were our deputies are now rising into positions, and that's really, really important. But I digress. Look, I was adopted and brought to New Orleans as a young girl. I was born in Philadelphia. And I just, as I'm aging, I feel more and more that part of what I need to do to make sure my life has meaning is not only the environmental work, but the work around justice. I want to know I was a part of what I think is probably the biggest transition this country will have to go through, which is, as the demographics have clearly demonstrated. Someone told me the other day there are more Black and brown kids in third grade across America than there are white kids. And that's a really scary, thing to a lot of people. But it's also, even if you're not scared of it because you're not racist, but that's a huge change in the power and in the way this country sees itself. And so I think ensuring that there's justice built into those the next policies is super important. Why it is so good to hear the White House saying, look, no matter what it is, whether it's infrastructure investments or clean energy investments or jobs, we need to ensure that they're being equitably distributed. Because a lot of times, even in climate change, right, when I'm meeting all the people who work in clean energy, rarely do I see someone who looks like me. And that's not okay. It's hard to sell prosperity when it's not really equally shared. So I think, for me, the racial equity and justice work, which Tim asked me to lead, and which I work on with an amazing woman on my team, Alicia Johnson, who's really leading it. and I talk about it, but she's doing all the hard work. But it has really, I think, for both of us, reminded us that wherever you are, you need to keep in mind how to push the organization in the right ways to do the right thing, to Spike Lee put it, doing the right thing. So for us, especially at Apple, economic empowerment, this idea that Apple spends billions of dollars every year on buying services and buying things. And why shouldn't some of those services and things be by women-owned business, by Black-owned businesses, by people of color, brown-owned businesses? How do we ensure that prosperity that Apple creates, it's a very successful company, is equally shared? So, it's just, in my mind, maybe all these things, I've always thought of myself as just an environmentalist. That's what I do. But now I realize that there's a way to do environment that empowers people economically. There's a way to do environment that increases justice and access. I don't do a lot in criminal justice reform, but we at Apple support organizations like LDF and EJI, the Equal Justice Institute, that are working on the front lines of these issues, because it is important. And frankly, because our products are part of the reason we know what happened to George Floyd. And so we feel that we're intimately connected to it. So again, I just want to encourage everyone. There are a million different ways to use science. You don't have to be in a lab. I went to Princeton to be a PhD engineer and realized that was not where I wanted to be in terms of a lab for my whole life. But instead, I feel like I use my science degree every day. And I want to just end by thanking you, Larry. You are a model of a servant leader, and what you've done for FAMU, what you did at Noaa, what you did for communities, especially in the wake of the Gulf crisis, was, you know, there should be that story told. I wish I was interviewing you. And thanks to our friends from Noaa as well, Dr. Friedman, and I think it was Louisa, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for those insights. I hope you also add to your Vita that you are indeed a role model, you know, for persons of color, persons not of color, for women and for men. So thank you so much for having such an outstanding career. It has touched us all, right? And will continue to do so. So we're really honored to have you here today. I wish we could join in a round of virtual applause, you know, to thank you for participating today. We appreciate it very, very much. I'm gonna turn it back over to Ms. Cummings, who will get us to the next thing. Thank you, Lisa, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, President Robinson. And thank you so very much, Ms. Lisa, for being with us today and sharing your profound thoughts on racial equity and the need for corporations to consider broadening the scope of their efforts to embrace HBCU initiatives. That was very profound. And thank you, both of you, President Robinson and Ms. Jackson, for your servant spirit in nurturing future leaders. There is a little more applause there. And you talked about having the heart of a servant. Just before this virtual forum began, Dr. Robinson and FAMU happened to be recognized just this morning with the Hope Award for the successful operation that Dr. Robinson has led here at Florida A&M in turning our legendary Bragg Memorial Stadium into a COVID testing operation and testing now more than 300,000 constituents. So the work continues with the servant spirit. So thank you so very much again for being with us. And thank you, President Robinson.